and you see the resource.
Hey everyone, this is Dr. Drizzle, and welcome to Crossing America Season 4. Now, before we get started, we have a few housekeeping things. If we look a little dark on the screen, that is on purpose. The sun has not hit the stage yet, but we wanted to make sure that the star of the show, the Washington Monument, is in view behind us. So hopefully as we go forward during this live stream, we will become a little bit more light, but we are so glad that you're here. As Miss Brown and Miss Schwannekamp have said, we'd like for you to keep your audio muted, and you can also turn off your cameras right now if you'd like to. If they're on, that's fine. We are excited to begin Season 4 of Crossing America. Crossing America is a collaboration between Expeditions and Education and is fully funded by the National Park Foundation. So thank you, kudos to the National Park Foundation for allowing us to be here. We will have 7 of these this summer. Not this summer, this school year. It's feeling like summer here today, and we're just very excited to get started. So with that being said, welcome to Crossing America Season 4. Now we're going to go to the deck for just a moment because I want to show you where we are. We are at the National Mall and Memorial Parks. Now, this is in Washington, D.C., and I was getting ready to say something very profound, like I can't understand how they got this acronym of NAMA, but now that I look at it a little closer, it looks like it takes the first 2 letters of the name of the park. So, for example, National Mall, N-A-M-A. If we went to Yosemite, it would be Y-O-S-E because we do not have but one word. So let's come back to us for a few minutes and let me tell you a few things about where we are. We are in Washington, D.C. We are live, which means we're going to have hundreds and hundreds of people coming behind us. So we're asking you to be a good human today and make sure you're behaving on the live stream. I can't make sure that everybody behind me is. So if something happens that's inappropriate, you just focus on the task at hand, which is to learn about the National Mall. So before we get started, let me introduce you to my amazing friends. And we just found out that Ranger Jen and I are celebrating a 6-year anniversary. We met here 6 years ago yesterday here at the National Mall when the wind was completely crazy. And if you look up that video, you're going to see that National Mall Ranger Jen's hat is everywhere. So Ranger Jen, thank you for letting us come back here today.
Sticking with you, huh?
Sticking with us. This is like the 4th or 5th time that we have been filming with you, and we're real excited about that. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came here.
Cool, thank you. Well, thanks for coming back to see us again. We're really excited to be sharing with everybody our park story here. I've worked here for 25 years. Yeah.
25 years.
25 at least, maybe even more. I think I stopped counting. But yeah, I came here because I just was always interested in history, and this was a chance to get a permanent job with the National Park Service. I tell students all the time that it was my 5th grade teacher that inspired me to get into history, and so I feel like I get to, pass that on to the next generation doing what I do here. So,
I love that. And
yeah, really
normally we say in the Park Service people don't stay around for a long time, but you're one of the outliers here.
Yeah, I've not moved. I moved a lot as a younger person, and so once I kind of got settled, I was excited to stay in one place, and I think we're fortunate in that we get to tell a variety of stories here, that we don't just have one thing. We can talk about all different places, and so I think that's helped keep me here for a long time.
Well, very good. And Ranger Bethany, let's go ahead and talk to you for a moment. Now, you're almost in the same boat, if you will. You've also been here 25 years, correct?
Yeah, I came just a few months, I think, after Ranger Jen. And like her, I've sort of stuck around. I think for me, it's the fact that this park continues to grow. We add new chapters to the story. I think we've had at least 3, maybe even 4 new memorials built in the time that I've been here. So it's been a fascinating journey, and I know we've got several more in the works. So, you know, continue to stick around to see how those play out.
That sounds wonderful. Well, the star of our show today is the Washington Monument. Now, just like National Mall has an acronym, what do we call the Washington Monument?
Well, we enjoy this one. Yeah, around here, this thing is known as, if you take the first 2 letters, WA and MO, and then I hope you're all saying it together, it becomes WAMO, and that's how we know it here on the National Mall.
So this is WAMO, and we're going to talk all about WAMO today. So let's go ahead and get started with this.
Sure.
So tell us, how tall is this Washington Monument, and why is it so significant that it's this tall?
Yeah, so this was built to honor George Washington, and yeah, it stands 555 feet, 5 1/8 inches tall. I often tell my my younger friends, you got 5 fingers, and it's 555, so it's really easy to remember. 555 feet, 5 1/8 inches, and it's not because I particularly measured that myself, but it is known as an obelisk, and that is why its height is 10 times the width of its base, and so that's about all the math I can handle, but that will kind of explain why it's as tall as it is.
Now, it is one of the tallest, or is it the tallest thing around here?
It's pretty much the tallest thing around here as far as actual buildings go. You found something a little bit taller.
There's a radio tower on 4th Street that's like 700, but this is very, very tall, and we like that. So let's go to you, Ranger Bethany, for just a moment. When did the construction of this monument begin? And tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So construction began on July 4th, 1848. The monument was being built by a private society known as the Washington National Monument Society, and they really wanted this to be a national monument. And so they were funding it through private donations. But initially they placed a cap on those donations. A person could only donate $1 per year. And remember, we're back in the 1840s, and so $1 is a little different than what we've got today. But you know, by 1848, they thought they had enough money to start building, and so they started construction. About 6 years later, they reached about 152 feet, and something unfortunate happened. They ran out of money. And because of that, the monument would stand at that height for over 24 years.
Okay.
And eventually, as the country starts to celebrate or plan its 100th birthday, you know, the centennial of the Declaration of Independence, there's this renewed or revived interest in finishing the monument. And so they start again in the late 1870s and finish the monument by 1884.
So there's a couple of things, kids, that you can start writing down in your journal. One, let's make sure we get that WAMO in there for Washington Monument. Let's also quickly draw or sketch this behind us. And would you please put the height, which is 555 feet, 5 1/8 inches. So make sure you've got that there. Then we also talked about this was started to be built in 1848, 1848, and they built it till they ran out of money.
It's a great lesson there.
It is a great lesson there. Sometimes maybe we should have the money before we start. If you're thinking about buying something at your house, you know, make sure you have the money in your piggy bank first, but they didn't have the money. Well, I've recently saw something that struck me, and I hope I'm not the only one, but it looks like that there are 2 shades of marble on this, Ranger Jen. Is that true? And if so, what happened?
Yeah, it really reflects what Ranger Bethany was talking about as far as the construction timeline. You can almost see it from just anywhere that you can see the monument. About a third of the way up, that's that time she mentioned when they ran out of money, and so they would stop work. And there are some really great old photos and a couple photos and drawings of what it looked like when it was not quite finished. And it must have been kind of embarrassing that here we are building this monument to honor George Washington in the middle of the city called Washington, and they couldn't finish it. But eventually, as you heard, they would get the money together, and they would go back to work. And when they did, they had to go to a different quarry. So that's
why.
the different shades. The colors
And a
are different.
quarry is where they would mine or curate the rocks from. So when they went back, there was different rocks there.
Slightly different shade, yes. Different quarries too in different places. Most of this rock comes from Maryland. A little bit comes from Massachusetts, but most of the major amount of rock is from Maryland in 2 different quarries.
Okay. Well, I know that you have a photo of what it looked like when they did that. So can you grab that really quickly? You were going to share, or maybe you're not sharing it yet. Let's go ahead and get this other question in first. So they're doing this, right?
Yes.
So did someone just say, let's just build it like this? Who was the designer of this?
Yeah, so the designer was an architect by the name of Robert Mills. He was very well known to the area, had designed a couple other buildings here for Washington, D.C., and even designed a Washington memorial, I believe, for Baltimore. So he kind of had some experience in doing this. And he's going to blend, initially for his original design, Egyptian and Greek architecture together. And those are going to be the 2 things that sort of influence his original design. And if I pop down here real quick and grab this photograph for you. So this is what the Washington Monument was initially supposed to look like. And you can see that on the bottom there, we have sort of a neoclassical colonnade. It was meant to be about 100 feet tall. There would be 30 columns surrounding it. Inside would be statues of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, Revolutionary War figures, and then on top of all things would be George Washington in a chariot. So again, a little bit of that Greek Roman influence coming through there. And then in the center, you have this very sort of Egyptian style obelisk. And you can see the top part of it is a little different than what we have today. It was mostly flat instead of having a pyramid on top. And it was going to be 600 feet. Okay. Now, they had always planned on folks going to the top. And in fact, Robert Mills had insisted that some form of railway be added to the Washington Monument, which would get them up to the top. Today we'd call that an elevator. But yeah, you can definitely see if you compare what the monument originally was supposed to look like to what it looks like today, it's very, very different. And the reason this was never built was
money.
Money. Yes.
Coming down to that again. So that is beautiful, but I think what we have behind us is absolutely beautiful too. And there is something on the very top of this, some type of aluminum cap. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Not only can I tell you, but I can show you without having to go up 555 feet, which as someone who's afraid of heights would have a big problem with. But yeah, this is a replica of what they call the capstone, which would have been placed on the top of the monument, so that we know it is a pyramid now, even though the original design didn't call for it. And you mentioned it's made of aluminum. It's pretty funny when we think about it today, right? Because a lot of you probably wrap your lunch, sandwiches in aluminum foil and don't think of it as being that precious a metal. But when they were finishing this monument in the 1880s, it was considered to be a precious metal. And so that's why our cap is made of aluminum. Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
It is cool. And something I want to just point out, this is the actual size of
like
what is
8 inches
up there right now.
Yep.
I mean, now think about this. This is 555 feet tall, okay? But this is what sits on top of it. Now, it looks like people have signed it.
I don't know that they themselves signed it, but it's kind of a marker of some of the people. Chester Arthur was there, dedication, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or when it was finished, yeah. And just the idea of putting the capstone on and marking that event. And some of the people, Thomas Casey, who would have been with the Army Corps of Engineers who helped finish it. So yeah, just kind of marking a little bit about the history of it. And yeah, it's kind of neat.
Very nice and very cool that I get to touch it right here.
And we don't have to go up to the top.
Exciting, very much. All
Just got a
right.
picture, I think, of this too, right? This is kind of
Oh
fun.
yeah, so here's a picture of it.
Yeah, so if you sort of take a look at this photograph, one of the things that might stand out is just how windy it is up there. You can see all of the workers sort of holding onto their hats so they don't fly off the 550-foot tall Washington Monument. But yeah, and again, it kind of gives you some perspective on just kind of how small that capstone is, that aluminum stone. And one thing that's kind of interesting to add sort of to that story there is that the aluminum capstone was so unique that for a time it was placed in a jewelry store in New York, right there in the window, so that people could pass by and see it, because most people didn't have aluminum in their homes at the time, and so it was a bit of an oddity that people wanted to take a look at.
Well, now people can go to the top of this, not on the outside, but they can go to the top on. So how many steps are inside the Washington Monument? And can I run up those steps after this?
So we have 896 steps to the top. The steps were open to the public until about 1976, and then they closed down. So today, if we want to go up to the top, we have a 70-second elevator ride. So it's a pretty quick trip. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the monument has always had an elevator or lift system. The original one ran on steam. Ours today runs on electricity. But most people chose to walk the steps only because that steam lift system took somewhere between 10 to 12 minutes to get you up to the top and to bring you back down. And so if you think about the round trip time associated with that, it was a lot easier just to head on up those stairs.
So that's a long time in an elevator, right? And now it is 70 seconds.
70 seconds.
Looks like we have a question. So let me go to the chat, and Miss Brown or Miss Schwannekamp, what is our question and who is it from?
Okay.
Great question. So who wants to take that?
Yeah, the numbers.
Yeah, so Ranger Jen, how many are around there?
I bet if you all guessed, you could come up with it. There are 50 flags around the monument, one for each of the 50 states.
All right, so is there anything written on those to denote which one is which?
No, for years there was nothing on them that I ever remember, but they have finally put numbers. So they're each numbered, and it's mostly because of the wind. And when it gets windy and they need to change out the flags, they know which one to go to.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So here we are at the National Mall. Things are happening behind us. In fact, we have a trash car going by right now, so we're waving at him.
All about preservation and taking care of the park.
Taking care of the place. So that was a great question. Was there another part of that, or just what were they?
So I think one of the reasons that we have the flag and the states represented there is definitely goes back to what Robert Mills wanted, this national monument, built by the people for the people. And so we have that represented there within the flags.
I love that. It's a great question. Thank you, Miss Bell's class. I bet is it snowing there in Wyoming? Drop that into the chat window for us. We've heard that there are something called memorial stones inside this place. What is that?
Is one of the I don't know, really coolest things we have here, because you look at this and you can't tell by looking at it from the outside that we have like this almost little museum of historic stones on the inside walls. It goes back to the story of us not having money to build it at the very beginning. And so they were looking for almost any kind of donations they could get. And someone came up with the idea of states donating stones. So it started with state donations. Alabama, right?
Yeah.
Alabama's first. So if we have any Alabama folks, it started with you guys. And then it became a way that states could contribute to the monument. And instead of having to send money, you could send a stone. So they encouraged you to, use a material that was unique to your state and design it any way you wanted. Some of them were obnoxiously large, and then they kind of formalized it and said we should make them a kind of set size to make it easier. But there are 193 of them. And when people could walk up and down the stairs, you could go right by them and get to see them all. And that was a really neat feature of a trip on the monument. And it's a story I use to explain a lot of the role of the Park Service in preservation, because our mission is all about taking care of these special places, but also allowing for the enjoyment. We want you all to come out and enjoy and have a good time. And this is one of those great examples where we really want you to enjoy yourself by coming and going to be able to use the stairs, but we also have to preserve the monument. And over time, there was a lot of damage happening to those stones. And it was more important that we take care of those stones than, people be able to walk up and down. So we have a bit of a compromise now with our elevator, but those stones are really some amazing works of art that you just don't even know. but you can go check them all out if you want to look up your state stone. All of them are on our park webpage.
I do want to say that anyone can go up there. The tickets are free. But if you're coming with your parents, they need to check online because you have to reserve your ticket.
The way to do it.
Probably even ahead of time. It looks like we can take up about 65 visitors every half hour, close to that.
Something like that.
Yeah, so maybe about 800 a day. So anybody can come look on the outside of it any time of the day. But if you want to go up between 9 and 4, which are basically the hours, you would have to get a ticket ahead of time.
Make a plug. It's recreation.gov where you go to get a lot of your national park advance reservations. That's where you'd go to reserve your monument tickets.
Yeah, and remember, it is free, and it's a good thing, because if not, we would just have people waiting in lines forever and possibly
It used to
not
be like that when we started.
Yeah,
She
and
worked the night
possibly not
shift,
getting in,
where you
right?
have to cut the line at the end of the night, and it was
How
awful.
sad would that
Yeah.
be if you're there and then, sorry, we're full. So I imagine with this being out here just in the open that things happen. It rains, it may snow here, we might have lightning strikes, but did I hear that in 2011 there was an earthquake? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so there was. In 2011, there was I think it was a 5.8 magnitude earthquake that hit about 90 miles southwest of Washington, D.C. It's the only earthquake that I've ever been a part of, and I have to say I didn't feel anything. I was standing on the monument grounds, and I had no idea anything was happening until a little bit later, until it came over our radios. But it did do a little bit of damage to the monument itself, and it was the one thing in the park that we were really concerned with after that earthquake happened, of how did the monuments withstand that event. And so the first step was to assess the damage, both from the inside and the outside. And for the outside, they did something they've never done here before. They actually had engineers rappel down.
Rappel?
Rappel.
So that means they were harnessed in with ropes?
Yes. They rappelled down from top to bottom. They inspected every stone. They removed anything that was loose that could become a safety hazard. And then they just noted any damage they found. And there were two things that they discovered. The first was the vast majority of the damage happened at the top, so roughly 480 feet up to the top of the monument, which made sense. The stone is the thinnest up there, anywhere between 15 to 18 inches, but we have about 15 feet down at the base. And the other thing that they discovered was that although damaged, the monument was completely stable, which was something that we were very excited and very happy to hear. And that allowed us to go to step 2, which was the repair work. Now, one of the things that happened almost immediately on the heels of the earthquake is we got the remnants of Hurricane Irene. And so, and one of the things that we were really concerned with was water getting into the Washington Monument, and we have cracks now, and we want to make sure that we seal those. We did a very quick repair job, and then after that, we were able to encase the monument in scaffolding, and then workers got to work sealing the cracks, doing what's called repointing, which if you think of your bathroom and if you have tiles in there, you have the caulking to keep the water from getting through. It's the same thing with the Washington Monument. We had to replace the vast majority of that. And then probably the thing that caused maybe a little bit more concern was we have a couple of stones shift to the point where you could see daylight. And so those stones had to be reset, and then some of them are even anchored to the wall. And that took about maybe 3 years or so, and then the Washington Monument reopened, brand new.
And if I'm not mistaken, there was a female maintenance worker or engineer that was up on this rappelling down too. So let's hear it for that. That's very exciting.
It was windy, and you could stand down here and you could see them up there kind of blowing in the wind. It was...
Well, let's take a moment now and just sort of relive that. So kids, we want you to stand up wherever you are, be really quiet so you're not interrupting people around you, but we're going to do a little bit of shake, rattle, and roll. So what I want us to do first is I want us to be the monument. So I want you to stand very straight. I'm even going to put my hands up in the air for the monument, and I want us to shake from side to side. So let's shake. All right. Now, the next thing I want us to do is I want us to rattle. So I want all of your bones to move back and forth. I want you to rattle. And then I want you to roll a little bit. So we're gonna roll. Boy, come on, Rangers, roll with me. So now that we
This
know
was in the program description.
this was not on the run of show, but we're doing it, but we're gonna do it one more time now that we know it. So it's shake, rattle, and roll. So up, monuments, shake, rattle, and roll. I love it, I love it, I love it. And look at the screen, the shake, rattles, and rolls are going everywhere. So go ahead and sit back down. And let's make sure we've got our pen or our pencil with us because we're going to talk about a few more things. Now, earlier we talked about this shape being an obelisk, which is a hard word to say, obelisk. Can you tell me why that was chosen as the design for the monument?
As a result of the competition that was had, you saw the design that Robert Mills had. He sort of had an obelisk in the original design, but the obelisk is an Egyptian symbol, and so it's strength and endurance. Is that what y'all said? And yeah, so that's Washington, right? And that's what you wanted to be able to see something tall from all over the place because you're honoring George Washington, the founding father, and hearkening back to the classical Egyptian symbol.
This was not in our program, so I'm hoping I don't throw you too much, but give me just a little 1-minute summary of the history of George Washington, just in case we're not sure exactly where we are here. So tell us a little bit about President Washington.
Sure. So George Washington, first president, he's really, the idea for this monument was because he had been the general during the Revolutionary War who helped us win our independence from Great Britain. And I like to bring up the fact, since we are in the city of Washington, D.C., that he is the person responsible for choosing this as the location for the nation's capital. He happened to live just downriver from us here a few miles and knew this area, thought the Potomac River was an appropriate spot and would be a good place for the nation's capital. So we owe him, we wouldn't be here today. We might be doing this from someplace else if it wasn't for old George Washington. But yeah, he had a lot of jobs. He started out as a surveyor. He was a soldier. He was a general. He was president of the Constitutional Convention when our government's being formed, and first president. And if we could see around our Washington Monument, you'd have a nice view of the White House where the president lives. George Washington is our only president who doesn't live in the White House because it isn't built yet, but he's responsible for helping to choose the location and get it started.
So a lot of reasons to want to build a monument to this man, to this good human. And I want you to remember that because we're going to come back to that in just a little bit. I want to know, Ranger Bethany, how much this costs, because I just want to know. So tell us a little bit about that.
Can I add something on to what Ranger Jen said
Please
first?
do.
I think it should definitely be noted that George Washington has a monument where the vast majority of the other people in our park have a memorial.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
one of the reasons is that he was still alive when the decision was made to commemorate him in some way. Now, they had no idea what was going to be built, how much it would cost, what it would look like. But yeah, if you look on the very first map of Washington, D.C., one of the things that's noted is the spot for a Washington Monument Memorial something.
So let's just make sure we're writing that down. So what you're saying is a monument is built for someone who was still alive?
Yeah, so that's one of the reasons that it is called a monument, yes.
So the memorials were after the fact. Okay, so that's something good to write down as we think about our engineering design challenge, which is going to come just a little bit later. So let's get back though. I hope you weren't just trying to stall. How much did this cost to build?
So Robert Mills estimated that his design, his original design, would cost just over $1 million. And that was really the figure that they're going with when they begin construction. On the date that they start building, they have about $89,000 in the coffer. So not near enough money to finish it, but they were hoping their donations would continue to come in. All in all, though, when we talk about the starting and the stopping of construction, we're talking about the reinforcing of the foundation. If you sort of put all that together, we're probably looking at more like $2.5 million in total.
which was a lot of money back then.
A lot of money at that
A lot of money back then.
Yeah.
Here's the thing we want to ask the kids though. How much would it cost to build this today?
Yeah.
Now, even using the same materials, thinking about that, because as you had mentioned before, the aluminum, which was a big deal back then, doesn't cost as much now, right? So it's going to still cost a lot of money, but it might be a little bit different than what you think, especially if we're using the same materials, because we have new technologies that can move things that wouldn't be humans.
36,000 blocks though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of marble.
But we also see how technology influenced the construction of the monument. If you look at the first phase, most of those stones are being hand cut. But by the time the 1870s rolls around, new technology had come about where those stones could be carved by using machines and then brought up and steam lifted to the top. And so even technology at that point was making the process a lot easier. And so if we add today's technology to that, you know, I think that it would be really kind of hard to maybe calculate how much it would cost today to build the Washington Monument. And maybe one of the things that you can do is see how this compares to some of the newer memorials that we have in the park and what the, you know, the cost of those would be.
And that information is actually out there. It's readily available. They could do some comparisons to that. Now, if we want to build a railway inside that goes up the side like they originally thought that we would do, that might be a little bit more money and probably a little bit more maintenance. Now, at the top, Ranger Jen, what would we see if we were up there?
Oh, well, on a clear day, which we have a pretty good clear day here today, I believe they say it's 30 miles view. And so you have two windows on each side, so you can go north, south, east, west, and you can see all the different views. So you see into Virginia from the south and the west, and you can see into DC and Maryland. Pretty much a major building almost from each view. If you know, a major building and then lots of other things. But when you look north, you see the White House. When you look east, you see the Capitol and all the Smithsonian's. When you look south, you see the Jefferson Memorial. When you look west, you see the Lincoln, the reflecting pool, and the World War II Memorial. I mean, just you get to see, and across the Potomac River and into Virginia and Arlington National Cemetery. There's just a really nice view from each window.
Now, I don't know if this is true or not, but I read that you might even could see the Blue Ridge Mountains on a very clear day. Now, we'll have to double check that one. It could be, could be right.
Maybe if you look really hard.
If you look really hard and not old and have to have glasses.
Yeah.
When this was done in 1884, people, I guess, were excited.
Very excited, yes. I mean, if you consider that it took 36 years to finish the monument, there was a lot of excitement going around when it was finally dedicated in 1885. And if you kind of take a look at this photograph right here, you can see even on this very cold February day, you know, hundreds of people are going to come out just to witness the dedication of the Washington Monument. And yeah, so, you know, even today, you know, people come from all around the world, and if they can't go inside, at least they can go up and sort of stand next to it and get perspective and look up and just see how tall this monument really is.
Well, I just got some good news. We're actually going to get to go up to the top of this. So kids, I need you to get ready for this. So before we head out, can you tell us, Ranger Jen, of a few things that you want them to look out for?
Sure. I think you're going to get a closer view. We're going to get to be right up close to it. You get to see the statue of George Washington, which is really exciting. You don't even know he's in there unless you go inside. What was it? The railway? We're gonna check out the elevator because that's how we go up to the top. And
maybe your favorite stone. Would we see that?
So the stones are kind of a feature on the way down.
Okay.
So what we do is we zoom you up to the top because we know you're very excited and you want to see the views. We're going to give you a chance to see some of the different views from the top. And then we have visitors go one flight down. You might not know there's actually two flights up there. 500 feet is where the windows are. And then 490 is where we have a tiny, I mean, your tiniest little museum exhibit ever. But different images and different history and the replica capstone. You got all kinds of things up there. So yeah, we've got lots of things for you to look at. We're going to take you on a little trip. Did I miss anything?
What would you want them to look at?
Oh, I think she pretty much covered it. I mean, I think one of the things that we're going to see right before you exit the elevator and come outside is one of our, I would say, coolest features inside the Washington Monument. I'm going to set it up and leave it that way, and then we'll tell you about it, a little bit more about it once you see it on that video.
Okay, are you ready? All right, kids, get ready because we are now going to head up to the top of the Washington Monument. Getting closer already.
Oh, look at those flags flying.
Yeah, and one of the things maybe to point out is that the monument itself only sways 1/8 of an inch in a sustained 35, 40 mile an hour wind, so there's not much movement attached to it.
Now that's that original picture you were talking about too.
Yeah. Finished. Yeah.
Boy, you can really see the difference of the stones.
Just how tall it is. Wow.
All right, I'm not going to climb on the outside, so let's head on in.
Everybody goes through security, but here you are entering the monument.
It's pretty regal just looking at from the inside there. Uh-oh.
Say hello to George.
Hi, George.
It's a life-size statue, so you get an idea of what he would have looked like.
The magic elevator.
There it is.
Wow, it does go pretty fast. I'm feeling it.
Yep. Sometimes people say their ears pop when you're in the elevator.
500 and some feet in 70 seconds.
500
pretty
feet.
quick.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, look at it go. Here we are.
Here we go. Only going one way.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, where are we?
We're looking out on the National Mall. There it is. It's the Capitol down at the end.
East.
View. Yep. Smithsonian museums are on either side of the grassy panels there, and the Capitol down at the end. This is our south view, looking at the tidal basin. See the Thomas Jefferson Memorial, Potomac River.
And this would be where our cherry blossoms are located. So each spring they'll bloom around the basin.
This is the west view. I don't think we're supposed to have favorites, but I think it's my favorite view. The pool, the Lincoln Memorial at the end, the World War II Memorial down front, a little pond over there on the right side there known as Constitution Gardens. If we had more time, I'd tell you all about it. And then the north view.
Tell us about this.
Yeah, so you see the White House there sort of a little bit in the distance and the ellipse right in front of it there. And just a lot of the important government buildings, when you think of some of the different agencies that we have here in Washington, D.C., you can see some of those buildings. And here's a great feature that we've added after the earthquake. The earthquake would become a part of the monument story. It's not something we definitely wanted to hide. We wanted people to sort of understand what happened and what we did to fix it. And here's one of those stones that slightly shifted, and you can see how it's kind of braced against the wall now.
Saw the red blinky lights for the airplanes.
And the airplanes,
too. People notice that from far and wide. It's kind of neat to see.
So here we're at 490. So you're seeing some of the exhibits that we have. So this is that capstone, the aluminum capstone that's on the top. And I believe that if anything happened to the one that we currently have up there, this one would take its place.
Oh, nice.
You're seeing the real thing there. And then, of course, because we are one of the tallest structures in Washington, D.C., we always have to be, conscious of lightning storms in the area. And we typically shut the monument down if there's a lightning storm approaching. And that's not because anyone is going to get hurt, but we're more concerned about maybe the electricity being affected, and no one wants to be stopped in that elevator.
Sure.
So you can see the lightning rods that we have up around that capstone there. This is a bird's eye view of that pyramidion, the top part.
This is a display of all those commemorative stones we talked about from the different states. Arizona's is right in front there. That's made of petrified wood. Some of these are really detailed. You see different organizations and states that all wanted to honor George Washington, and so that's what you would see on the way down. here's our high-tech elevator. I told you we zoom you up to the top. We go down and we slow down in 2 different places, and the windows on the elevator doors clear up, and you get to see some of those commemorative stones. So this was our compromise of providing you the chance to see some of these stones and also to keep our monument safe. And I'm pretty sure, isn't this where the color changes on the outside?
It is.
So that you can see, as Bethany said before, how the kind of up near the top, it's hand carved and,
Yes.
and just not as smooth. It's
Yep.
pretty neat. Oh, here comes her.
Here comes our cliffhanger,
Here
right?
comes your surprise. So cool. There it is.
Now, wait a minute. Has someone written on the wall there?
Yeah, they have. If you kind of remember the fact that the Washington Monument stood here for 24 years at about 152, 156 feet, when the Civil War happened, soldiers were brought in to defend the city, and the Washington Monument grounds was used as a parade ground, as a campground. They even had cattle out here grazing. They sometimes referred to the monument at that time as the beef depot. But one of those soldiers went inside the Washington Monument and left his mark. So D.C. Hickey in 1861 was here. I believe, we think he tried to draw George Washington there on the wall. We'll leave you to determine how good a job he did. But yeah, so this is something that we would very much discourage anyone from ever doing today. But 1861 Civil War graffiti, kind of cool.
It is kind of cool, and I think they call that historical graffiti, and we see that at several of our parks. Today it would be a nuisance, it would be trespassing, it would be vandalism.
Yes.
Right.
But to know that that was there and you're standing and looking at that, and someone wrote that so many hundred years ago. I know that there were a lot of challenges for this place, to build this place. What challenges did the engineers face in making sure that this was a stable monument?
So I think the biggest challenge came during the second phase of construction. I mean, the monument sat here for, you know, a very long time, and there was some concern about how well the foundation had held up. So the first thing they wanted to sort of check out was that foundation going to be strong enough to hold, you know, what, 350 additional feet of monument? And they decided that it needed to be reinforced. And so that was the first thing they did during what we call the second phase of construction. And the hill behind us is an artificial hill, so it's man-made. We have, I think, about 36 feet of monument below us, right? And that was added as a stabilizing feature too, just to make sure that that monument would continue to stand for years to come. So I think it was that foundation work that I would say was the biggest challenge for the engineers for this monument.
Okay. Well, I do want to share a book with you. There are several books written about the Washington Monument, but not a lot for kids. So as I share the title of this, I want you to think about, what could you write about the Washington Monument? Could you be the next big author? So this one is called The Washington Monument, and it's a Focus on America book. And one of the things I just want to share in here is something called Washington by the Numbers. So the weight of the stone that was at the top, that pyramidal stone, 3,300 pounds. So thinking about that, next time I go up, I'm probably going to cover my head because that is very heavy. The number of stone blocks, as you said before, 36,490 some. So that is a lot of, and those were hand put, right? They were hand lifted there. As we said before, the steps inside the monument, 897.
So 96, 97, we always disagree, I think, on a step or two.
Away.
Yeah, we think they took one away. I have not counted, though, so.
Well, we're going to ask Ranger Jen and Ranger Bethany, because they have permission to run up those stairs when this is over, just to count those, because I would need to call the author of this book and make that change. And then the thickness of the walls down at the base, it says 15 feet.
Yes.
Does that sound correct?
Yep.
Now, one of the things I noticed when I was reading the book is they were talking about visitors to Washington, D.C. before the pandemic, before the pandemic started. And I noticed that there were 7.8 million at the Lincoln Memorial, but only 108,000 here. And it made me sad because here we are representing, but why are there less numbers? What did they count here?
They counted the people who went inside. And when you have an elevator access only point and everybody going through security, you have to limit the number of people who can go in. So they're counting how many people physically went inside. If you all can see behind us, there have been people out here all day long. I don't know that we're counting them in that number. It's the people who go inside.
Absolutely, and we do know that a lot of people visit here. So remember, if you want to come and visit the National Mall, which we hope you do, don't forget recreation.gov to get those tickets early. Now, I want to talk a little bit about this engineering design challenge that we're encouraging kids around the country to get involved with. So if we'll go to the screen for just a moment. Oh my goodness, there is Spider-Man. Well, we included this photo because in 2017 there was a Spider-Man video or movie where he went up to the top. Now, he did not go up there. This is through the means of Photoshop, but he's up there trying to rescue or help people that are in the monument. So that's not what we're going to ask you to do, but we are going to ask you to become involved. There was a lot of planning that went into this monument, WAMO, behind us. A lot of people were involved. There were conversations that were had. There was money that was raised, although not enough. But it was built in honor of, at the time, George Washington, the president. So we're going to ask you to think about how this was built. And then we want you to go back to your own communities. And I want you to think, if you were the designer, the builder, the engineer of a monument or memorial, remember the difference between those, how would you do it? Who would it be for? Think of the why, the W's. Why, where, when, what, and then we'll add the H. How would you build this monument? These rangers would love to know who you would design a monument for. If you want to get even more excited about this, what would be the next monument that would be built here, memorial, on these grounds of the National Mall? I think that could be very exciting too. So we want to make sure that you are thinking about how you can make your mark in the world by creating your own, designing your own monument. And think about the materials that you're going to use. Remember the science and engineering pieces you taught. If you're going to do an obelisk, you need to think about the base times the height. There's your math there, correct?
Symbolism, like
the symbolism
things that represent either the person or the event that you're going to be dealing with.
I love that. Anything you would want them to think about as they're building this?
I would think, how would visitors use the monument or memorial? You know, what would take place there, and yeah, how could you reach the largest audience so that they would be able to experience your monument or memorial?
Well, we want you to give your monument a name. We want you to tell us why you're building it, and you can share this on social media. You can tag the National Park Foundation. You can tag the National Mall and Memorial Parks, or NAMA, if you will.
National Mall NPS is our social media.
National Mall NPS is where you could share your designs. I think that's going to be very exciting. I'm excited to see what they create. I'm going to ask Miss Brown and Miss Schwannekamp if there are any more questions in the chat window. We have a few moments for you to ask or stump the Rangers, which we like to do too. So let's come back to us for just a few minutes.
That might be
and
really
see
easy
if we have any
Yeah,
questions. Really. Yes, yes. So kids, what are we thinking? Any questions in the chat window? Gosh, that is such a good question. Jen, we'll start with you.
Yeah, we happen to have an airport right across the river from us. So the flight path of the planes is right near us. You'll notice they don't fly a lot over us, because as I mentioned, right nearby is the White House, so they don't like planes flying around there. But along the Potomac River, if we were over on the tidal basin, it would be even a lot louder.
Okay. And we also have helicopters that fly across. What are the helicopters?
Yeah, so most of the helicopters are either law enforcement or military. We don't have helicopter tours like a lot of the other larger cities do, again, because of all of the security features that we have, you know, around the park itself. But yeah, you know, sometimes you could time the day by the helicopter that goes overhead.
Yeah, and we live near the White House here,
Yeah.
right? So the president will fly
Yes.
back and forth, and Air Force One is the plane.
He takes the helicopter to the plane, right?
Takes the
Yeah.
helicopter to the plane.
Yeah.
Great question. Any other questions? Oh, great question. This could be a stumper. I hope this is a stumper for Miss Cleveland's class.
Yeah, so I don't know that we technically have a true capacity per se. Once you go inside, you're actually allowed to stay there as long as you want. The thing that we always caution our visitors, though, is that we don't have restrooms inside the Washington Monument, and so that limits usually the amount of time that they spend in there. But yeah, it usually cycles through on its own, but I would say that probably we could put
20 in the elevator.
yeah, and then maybe a couple hundred between the two different levels that we have. We don't like to stuff the monument full because, you know, we don't want you waiting in line for a window. We don't want you waiting in line to get off the elevator. We want to make sure that you have this, you know, awesome experience at the top. So yeah, we sort of control the amount that go in at a time. But I would say a couple hundred if we were to fill the monument with those two levels at the top.
I love that. I love that. Any more questions? Ooh,
Yeah, it was based on the fact that they called it an obelisk, yes, and
Yeah.
and they were basing the height on the. You're getting me to talk about math again, which
The
is
base,
that
right.
challenge. Yes, it's the height is 10 times the base.
right. So if it had been a
So the
20-foot
55
base,
was the base.
it would have been 10 times that, right? So we want to think about, they also wanted it to be the tallest building around, and it was for a long time
Tallest in the world, yeah.
till the Eiffel Tower was built, and that took over. And now we have so many other things, not in DC proper. There is a radio tower, but that's controlled by the FCC, so that's a different thing. But this is still the tallest and beautiful building monument behind us, but it's not the only thing here. So real quickly, favorite monument memorial here at National Mall?
Probably the memorial to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, which sits over on the tidal basin. It's just a really lovely, designed by a landscape architect who liked plants and trees and lots of different statues and things. So
And water features,
water
they are
features,
beautiful.
yes.
water
If you're
features.
designing a memorial, think about a water feature. Think about lights that may or may not work, and think about all of that when you're thinking about what your memorial design is going to include.
And that was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, which was
FDR,
one of
yes.
our presidents.
Yes,
And he was number
32.
32.
We did a video there once, so you can go back
Go
and
back and look at the
all about
videos
it,
on
yeah.
our YouTube. And what about you?
Well, I have to say, being from the land of Lincoln, I would have to say the Lincoln Memorial. And not only because of the history associated with our 16th president, President Lincoln, but also due to its connection to the civil rights movement. I mean, that's the spot where Dr. King gave his very important I Have a Dream speech. And we have that spot marked exactly where he stood. So you can kind of stand there and think about what your dream would be for the world. Which I think
love
is
that.
amazing.
But there's also war memorials here, World War II. There's the Vietnam Memorial. There is a memorial for women
Who served in Vietnam.
that served in Vietnam here. So many other things that you can do when you visit here.
King.
Dr. King, absolutely one of my favorites, to just the idea of the way they built that one. So I want to encourage you all to work on that monument and share that out with us. I want you to encourage, oh, we might be getting something over us. So hang on, I called ahead for something to come over, but we'll see if it's going to happen. I want to thank the National Park Foundation for their funding of these live streams for Crossing America Season 4. I want to make sure that we are thanking Ranger Jen and Ranger Bethany, who are amazing people to work with. We also have some hosts online. We have Miss Schwanekamp and we have Miss Brown who are helping us. Behind the scenes, we have Steve working tech, and then from Michigan, Dave is working on graphics. And we do have a teacher volunteer. So come on out, Miss Sanchez. You're going to come out and join us. At each of our live streams, we try to bring somebody in that works with us. So this is Dr. Sanchez, and she's the teacher librarian at a school here. Is it
Mount Harmony Elementary.
Mount Harmony Elementary
And ask her
School.
how many of her students have been to the National Mall.
How many of your students have been to the National Mall?
Over 600.
Every single one of them.
Yes.
Every single one. Yes.
Absolutely. So on behalf of all of these people, we want to encourage you to be good humans. We want to encourage you to get outside and review things. And we didn't get the sun here, but it's shining beautifully on WAMO today. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you. Let's look and see where we're going next, if we can hit the screen for just a moment. We're going to be meeting you on November the 18th at Mammoth Cave National Park. And we're going to be filming live from Sloan's Pond. And we're going to be working with some researchers there to see how they rebuilt this ecosystem to bring back native plants. But we'll also get to see inside the cave too. So on behalf of all of us, we're going to give you a big wave here. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you next time.